Hey everyone, I'm back with another update. In this episode, I'll cover immigration related news, the government shutdown, Epstein emails, investigations in the Department of Justice, a foster care executive order, and the end of the penny. Of course, I'll end with the noteworthy tidbits. There's been a lot of talk about H 1B visas lately, so let's go over the highlights. Many, like Congressman Byron Donalds and Chip Roy, want H 1B visas abolished, with Donalds saying H 1B is a complete scam, and Roy filing legislation that would halt all legal immigration until H 1B visas are abolished, birthright citizenship is handled, and chain migration is addressed. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene filed legislation to fully abolish H 1B visas, and the Trump administration will now be rejecting new visas based on health conditions, including obesity, to save on healthcare costs. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said President Trump's plan for visas is to temporarily bring in expert overseas workers to train Americans, and then they will go back home. He pointed out that many items, like semiconductors, haven't been built in the United States for years now, so American workers need to be trained on how to do so. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced that 150 illegal alien child predators and sex offenders have been caught in Florida under Operation Dirtbag, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis announced the completion of Operation Criminal Return, which includes child predator illegals. In the operation, almost 230 criminal aliens were detained, 164 of which are sex offenders, 54 are sexual predators, 2 are convicted murderers, and 1 was convicted of drug trafficking, and 8 other felonies. The California DMV admitted it issued commercial driver's licenses to around 17,000 foreign drivers who can't properly read English, and a staffer for Senator Tammy Duckworth was caught posing as a lawyer for an illegal alien that was deported 4 times and has a DUI conviction. Border Commander Greg Bovino and a team of agents arrived in Charlotte, North Carolina to oversee a new immigration enforcement operation, and DHS confirmed the United States will have net negative migration for the first time in 50 years. However, an activist judge has ordered the Trump administration to release 615 illegals who were detained during Operation Midway Blitz in Chicago, so we'll see what happens with that. Vice President Vance and HUD Secretary Scott Turner both said that mass deportations will help with housing affordability, as well as increasing supply. And since we're on the topic of housing, the Trump administration is looking into normalizing portable mortgages, which would allow Americans to keep their interest rate, term, and lender when moving to a different home. On to the government shutdown. After Senate approval on November 10th, the House reconvened on the 12th for the first session since the shutdown started. The House passed the revised continuing resolution with the support of nearly all Republicans and a handful of Democrats. Most Democrats opposed it due to the lack of Affordable Care Act protections. This bill funds the government through January 30th, includes full-year funding for the USDA, securing SNAP through September 2026, guarantees back pay for federal workers, and bars layoffs during the lapse. President Trump signed the legislation into law that evening in the Oval Office, flanked by Republican leaders like House Speaker Mike Johnson, and the White House Office of Management and Budget ordered agencies to reopen promptly and orderly, directing furloughed workers to return the very next day. Travel disruptions lingered, with FAA staff shortages causing flight reductions at 40 major airports, but officials anticipate normalization by the weekend before Thanksgiving. The next day, on November 13th, federal offices, including the Capitol Visitor Center, Smithsonian Museums, and National Zoo, resumed operations. About 1.4 million affected workers, furloughed or unpaid, began returning, though back pay processing could take days to weeks. TSA agents received $10,000 bonuses from Secretary Noem for working unpaid shifts. States scrambled to distribute full November benefits after partial or halted payments during the shutdown, with at least 16 states issuing full amounts over the weekend, 13 states providing partial payments, and others beginning processing. USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins confirmed efforts to cover the $9.2 billion cost, reversing Trump administration pauses that sparked lawsuits. Air travel chaos eased, but wasn't fully resolved, with American Airlines praising staff resilience. Economic analyses predicted worse GDP hits than the 2018 to 2019 shutdown, including delayed jobs reports and gaps in data. Let's switch to the Epstein emails. Only hours after the government shutdown ended, Democrats on the House Oversight Committee released 3 previously unseen emails from Jeffrey Epstein's estate as part of an ongoing investigation into the late financier's sex trafficking network. These emails, obtained from a larger production of over 23,000 documents, explicitly reference President Trump and suggest he was aware of Epstein's abuse of underage girls. The emails do not contain evidence of Trump's involvement in criminal activity, and Trump has long maintained he banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago for inappropriate behavior and had no role in the trafficking ring. The White House dismissed the emails as a Democrat hoax and selective leak designed to distract from recent legislative wins, and Republicans on the committee responded by releasing over 20,000 additional documents later that day, including more Epstein emails that often criticized Trump harshly, framing the Democratic release as partisan. This builds on prior Epstein document releases where Trump's name appeared in non-incriminating contexts, such as social events pre-2000. No victims have accused Trump of abuse in sworn testimony, including Virginia Giuffre, who clarified in depositions that she met Trump only casually at Mar-a-Lago and saw no wrongdoing. However, the emails have reignited bipartisan demands for the DOJ to unseal all remaining files, with a discharge petition now at 218 signatures poised to force a House vote next week. The three Democratic highlighted emails span from 2011 to 2019 and involve Epstein's communications with Ghislaine Maxwell and author Michael Wolff, who wrote books on Trump's presidency. They were part of Epstein's private correspondence, redacted for victim privacy. Here's a breakdown of the emails. The email dated April 2, 2011, was sent from Epstein to Maxwell, and it said, "I want you to realize that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Virginia spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned." The context of this email is that it was written amid media scrutiny of Epstein's associates post-Giuffre's 2011 interviews. Epstein implies Trump avoided commenting on Epstein's scandals, despite close proximity to a victim's suggested leverage or awareness, but Giuffre later testified that she never saw Trump at Epstein's properties. Considering the person mentioned in the email said she saw no wrongdoing as far as Trump goes, I'd say this email provides support to Giuffre's testimony and does the opposite of incriminate Trump. On December 15, 2015, Wolff sent an email to Epstein discussing crafting a response for Trump's CNN debate interview on Epstein ties. Wolff said, "If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the house, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency," and Epstein replied affirmatively. For context, flight logs show only domestic flights pre-2000. The last email was from 2019 with the exact date redacted and was sent from Epstein to Wolff saying, "Of course Trump knew about the girls," as he asked Ghislaine to stop. Epstein also references Trump asking Epstein to stay away from Mar-a-Lago. Additional Republican-released emails show Epstein's disdain for Trump, including messages from 2011 to 2017 mocking Trump's presidency, business dealings, and family. These portray Epstein as opportunistic, potentially fabricating claims for influence. Considering the timing and the backlash Democrats received for dragging out the government shutdown, stalling SNAP benefits for American citizens while fighting for funding for illegals, I'd say these emails were released to shift attention away from the shutdown. Unfortunately for the Democrats, the emails more so helped Trump's claims that he wasn't involved in Epstein's criminal activity. Furthermore, Congressman Tim Burchett's motion to bring the Epstein files to an immediate House floor vote was blocked by the Democrats, and then the Democrat Party sent out the claim that President Trump spent Thanksgiving with Epstein in 2017, and that was very easily debunked. It's all extremely pathetic. The Democrats keep trying to connect Trump to Epstein, even lying about it, but then block the full release of the Epstein files. The release of the files will go to a House vote next week. Shifting to investigations and the Department of Justice. U.S. Attorney Alina Habba was ambushed, her property was destroyed, and the assailant fled the scene. Luckily, Habba was unharmed, and the incident is being investigated by the DOJ. The DOJ is suing California Governor Gavin Newsom to block his 2026 gerrymandered House map, calling it unconstitutional and illegal, and Attorney General Pam Bondi confirmed that Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon is on the ground in California thoroughly investigating U.S. Berkeley for letting Antifa terrorize the TPUSA event. Congresswoman Ana Paulina Luna demanded the government lock up Jack Smith for weaponizing law enforcement against Trump and Republicans, and Federal Housing Director Bill Pulte criminally referred Congressman Eric Swalwell to the DOJ on accusations of mortgage and tax fraud. Let's move on to the foster care executive order. The order is titled Fostering the Future for American Children and Families, and President Trump signed it in the East Room of the White House. This order launches a major initiative to modernize the U.S. foster care system with a strong emphasis on supporting the approximately 15,000 to 20,000 youth who age out of foster care each year. It addresses stark challenges faced by these young adults. About 50% become homeless, only half complete high school, fewer than 5% earn a 4-year college degree, and just half are employed by the age of 24. The order prioritizes family preservation where possible while enhancing federal resources, public to private partnerships, and faith based involvement to promote independence, education, and stability. The initiative builds on First Lady Melania's Be Best campaign and her Fostering the Future program, which already provides scholarships to foster youth at universities like Vanderbilt, University of Miami, Villanova, and Oral Roberts. Trump described the order as an historic step to make the system better, fairer, and more effective, crediting Melania's incredible devotion to America's youth. He invoked biblical principles, stating, "The Bible tells us that one of the measures of any society is how it cares for vulnerable children and orphans, and pledged that these children will never ever be forgotten as America is made great again." The order directs federal agencies to coordinate efforts across education, housing, workforce development, and child welfare. Switching to the end of the penny. On November 12th, the U.S. Mint struck the final circulating pennies in its Philadelphia facility, ending over 230 years of production for the 1-cent coin. This marks the official discontinuation of the penny as legal tender currency, driven by rising production costs and the shift towards digital payment. U.S. Treasurer Brandon Beach personally struck the last 5 pennies in a ceremonial event with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in attendance. These final coins were produced on blank coin discs and will likely be auctioned for collectors. Pennies were first minted in 1793 under the Coinage Act of 1792. The last U.S. coin discontinued before this was the half cent in 1857. In fiscal 2024, pennies made up 57% of the Mint's 5.61 billion circulating coins produced. With each penny now costing about 4 cents to make, it only made sense to discontinue it. President Trump directed the halt in February 2025 via a Truth Social post, calling it wasteful as production costs had doubled in a decade. The move is projected to save taxpayers about $56 million annually, and with an estimated 250 to 300 billion pennies already in circulation, far more than needed for commerce, the supply should last for years. Existing pennies remain legal tender and won't vanish immediately. However, about 2/3 of Federal Reserve coin terminals have stopped distributing them, leading to shortages in some areas. Retailers may round prices up or down to the nearest 5 cents for cash sales, similar to practices in Canada, which ended its penny in 2013, Australia, and New Zealand. With fewer than 20% of U.S. payments in cash, the transition is expected to accelerate cashless adoption. The Mint will produce limited edition pennies for collectors, including potential gold variants, but no more for everyday use. Attention is now shifting to the 5-cent nickel, which costs nearly 14 cents to produce, and legislation is in discussion to reform its composition or phase it out too. Now it's time for the noteworthy tidbits, which are brought to you today by Old Glory. Let me tell you about them quick. Are you looking for a gift for a music lover, or maybe some apparel to show off your quirky side? Old Glory has you covered. With over 300,000 officially licensed items covering music, sports, entertainment, and pop culture, you're guaranteed to find the perfect item. They even have seasonal gear. My husband enjoys the Beatles and Led Zeppelin apparel, and I love the Billy Idol apparel. I even found items for my fellow plant enthusiasts. This family-owned superstore is known for their quality and customer service, offers free standard shipping on all orders, and orders are shipped the same day you purchase. My discount code gives you 15% off your entire order, and it's currently the best deal available. Just visit oldglory.com and enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout. All right, let's get back to the tidbits. President Trump nominated Aaron Peterson to serve as judge on the United States District Court for the District of Alaska, David Clay Folks to serve as judge on the United States District Court for the Western District of Arkansas, and Nick Conge to serve as judge on the United States District Court for the Southern District of Texas. It's been discovered that individuals linked to the Chinese Communist Party used shell companies to purchase a trailer park sharing a fence with a U.S. military Air Force base in Missouri where B-2 bombers take off. Since President Trump surged resources to Chicago, shootings in the city are down 35% to the lowest in 4 years. Homicides are down 16%, robberies are down 41%, carjackings are down 48%, and transit crime is down 20%. It was discovered that Chicago public schools spent $7.7 million in taxpayer funds on travel this past year, including to Egypt, Finland, and South Africa, despite a deficit of nearly $1 billion. President Trump has officially sued the BBC for deceptively editing his January 6th speech, and the next day the BBC apologized to Trump, saying it was an error of judgment and the program will not be broadcast again in this form on any BBC platform. Considering their fabricated video was used over and over again to claim Trump incited violence on January 6th, I'd say the apology is weak and long overdue. The U.S. Supreme Court set oral arguments on whether to uphold President Trump's firing of Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook for January 21st. Attorney General Ken Paxton has officially filed to run for U.S. Senate in Texas, challenging John Cornyn. FBI Director Kash Patel announced that the pipeline to create fentanyl has been shut down in Mexico and worldwide, explaining, these substances are now banned and they will no longer be utilized by the Mexican drug trafficking organizations, and that the Chinese government agreed on a plan to stop fentanyl precursors. California Governor Gavin Newsom's former chief of staff was arrested on conspiracy to commit bank and wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States, and obstruct justice, subscribing to false tax returns and making false statements. USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins discovered that 5,000 dead people are receiving SNAP benefits and 500,000 people are getting SNAP benefits 2 times under the same name. She said that this light has now been shined on one of the most corrupt, dysfunctional programs in American history, and there's very big announcements coming next week on this. The House will soon consider passing a congressional stock trading ban, with Congresswoman Ana Paulina Luna filing a discharge petition. She explained most members are making 600% returns after they're aware of the market shifts, after they are aware of information coming. So we're actually going to an outright ban on stock trading. It's expected that domestic production and American jobs will bring the 70% of rare earth materials we get from China down to 0% by the end of President Trump's term. Senator John Fetterman collapsed due to a ventricular fibrillation flare-up and was transported to a hospital in Pittsburgh. He sustained minor injuries to his face, but luckily is feeling well otherwise. War Secretary Pete Hegseth launched Operation Southern Spear to defend the American hemisphere from narco-terrorist and lethal drugs. President Trump announced new trade agreements that are expected to lower the cost of coffee, bananas, and beef. The countries involve Argentina, El Salvador, Ecuador, and Guatemala, with all 4 countries agreeing to a framework on reciprocal trade. Steak 'n Shake is now switching its milk to A2, which comes from cows that are never treated with the RBST growth hormone, so the milk will be easier on digestion. Lastly, Vice President Vance confirmed he will discuss the 2028 presidential campaign with President Trump after the midterms next year, but right now he's 100% focused on working for the people. That's all I have for today. I'll be back with another update soon. Until then, please like, subscribe, and share this podcast, and follow me on Instagram and X at Shades of Jade Pod. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.